Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. It's always cool when an annoying customer asks for a discount, but ends up paying more. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Think price is too high? Have some more. I worked as a project manager for an IT company supporting and improving customer software. Special snowflake customers have a few tricks when they don't like prices for the improvements they request, which require high-level design, then pricing. Mostly they just say, "That seems a bit expensive. Can you check to see if it can be reduced by some percentage and we can proceed?" The other common one is to remove requirements from the design, then raise faults on the delivered system that it doesn't do whatever it was that was removed, and management also gets it added under warranty. Account management would let them get away with this, making the people doing the design and pricing look like we're not effective at our jobs. One particular customer got so bad that we started padding the quotes by their usual percentage so that when their "please remove" was applied, it came to the estimated amount. It's not the revenge bit. Eventually, I made it to the account management level for this particular customer. First piece of product pricing comes through to me. I asked the PM if it had been padded, which it has. I remove it to their concern. Customer asks if it can be checked to see if it can be done cheaper. I wait a day, then present the design back with an increase of the requested reduction. When they queried the increase, I explained that the recheck of the design and pricing was additional effort that now needs to be covered by the project work so that it's been rolled into the reviewed price. If they weren't happy, I could get it checked again, but that would require additional effort that would need to be covered. They stopped asking for discounts after a couple of rounds of that. And our second story. Well, this is Red Lobster, and we do things the Red Lobster way. At the time, I was working in the kitchen as an assembler. This can be one of the most clutch positions on the line, as you take all the food being prepared by the other cooks and organize it into the tickets that can be taken out to the dining room. Accordingly, it's often a bottleneck for food leaving the kitchen. If you have a slow assembler, cooked food dies under the heating lamps, grilled salmon dries out, fries become soggy, linguine Alfredo hardens into concrete. Really horrific crap. It's imperative that food not sit in the window. I was working a weekday lunch shift, which is normally pretty slow. We must have provoked the wrath of the restaurant gods on this day, though, because out of nowhere, the store got hit with a tsunami of customers. I could just barely make out the other cooks through the clouds of shrimp scampi, fryer grease, and Cheddar Bay biscuits flying through the air. I knew the crap blizzard was headed my direction and began putting empty plates up in the window with the shape of each ticket that was supposed to leave the kitchen. A technique I'd learned to help survive bullcrap like this. On the other side of the window, coordinating the servers, was my manager, C-Phase. Shouldn't use his real name, actually. Let's call him Bob instead. Bob was a bit hyperactive and had an irritating tendency to micromanage kitchen processes, a problem compounded by his not knowing how the F to run a kitchen. When I began putting empty plates in the window so that the incoming interstellar-sized wave of seafood had something to land on, he stopped me. "What are you doing?" Bob asked. "I'm putting the plates and their sides in the window because we're about to have a very high volume of food coming through," I replied. "Well, this is Red Lobster, and here we do things the Red Lobster way. We plate the food when the food is ready, and we don't put sides on early." I tried explaining that the Red Lobster way was designed by sentient suits and ties physically incapable of holding a spatula, that our sacred way, as dictated by the Good Book of Employee Training, had died in the trenches of last year's Endless Shrimp Special, that while I appreciated the job, I wasn't prepared for an honorable death at the hands of this rush to uphold its most obscure tenets. But he wasn't having any of it. Bob insisted that I take the plates out of the window and only pass him plates and tickets that were 100% completed. Knowing full well that Bob was flying us by the book into a storm of crap, I put on a feces-resistant raincoat, rubbed some Vicks under my nose, and braced for impact. 30 minutes later, the window was chaos. Finished food was left dying in the wings of the window, while I, swiftly enough to avoid reprimand, but with the fatalistic mechanical motion of a flood pump removing water at a fraction of a rate at which it's arriving, plated up one finished ticket at a time. Bob was equal parts confused and furious, like a toddler whose toy was suddenly taken away. "What's this food waiting on?" he cried, gesturing towards a shriveled up steak and its associated sides. "Well, that order's waiting on some fried shrimp, and I need to wait for the ticket to be complete before I plate it up." "Why's the ticket missing fried shrimp?" "Unfortunately, I'm not manning the fryer, sir, so I don't know." This continued for the better part of an hour. It seemed like every ticket was missing one little thing that kept it from leaving the kitchen. After the rush had passed, I was dumping its precipitated liquid crap from my galoshes. Bob approached me with the twitchy, nervous energy of a coked-up boxer. Well, that or a hyper-caffeinated insecure manager who needed to assert his dominance over the underpaid crew of some bunk-butt seafood restaurant. "Can I, speak to you in the walk-in for a moment, Mr. OP?" "Sure thing." We walked to the cooler as I struggled to remember how to fight off an attacker armed with a kitchen knife from my days in Dish. "So what happened back there?" Bob asked, arms folded, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "You said we should follow the system, and we did," I replied, mentally noting that he was standing in front of the walk-in's only exit. "But there were a lot of missed items on those tickets. We had food dying in the window." "I saw it. Yeah, it was pretty bad." "So why was the food missing?" "I don't know. I wasn't cooking the food. I was assembling it. I'm the assembler." This line of questioning continued, with Bob trying to somehow pin the catastrophe F of the last hour on my willingness to comply with his orders, while I blithely insisted that I did exactly what was asked of me. After not being able to move past this point for several minutes, Bob made some sweeping statement about doing better next time and left. Incidentally, the next time I was assembling and Bob was on the other side of the window, nothing was said about the Red Lobster way, and the rush went smoother, albeit with some hotter plates and servers having to return for delayed items. I guess we ended up doing better after all. I hope you're now doing something that utilizes your wonderful writing style. Bravo. And our last story. Entitled Uncle tries and fails to steal our money. Just a little background before I start my story. My grandpa, 91, was sick for a long time, and he eventually died. He was a pretty rich man and was planning on giving my grandma most of his money. The rest of it went to his 3 kids, my dad, aunt, and uncle, and me and my 2 sisters. My uncle is so obsessed with money and goes so far out of his way to save the slightest penny, he's never had a real job except for being in the military for 15 years. My aunt's also never had a job, but she made money by helping grandma with shopping, yard work, etc. She can't really leave the house and she has a bad hip. Out of their 3 kids, my dad's the only one who got married and had kids. My aunt and uncle still live near my grandma's house, which is still in their hometown. Now to start the story. I was 10 at the time, and my sisters, twins, were 12. We'd just gotten the news of my grandpa's death, and we're all very torn up over it. His funeral was 1 week later, and that's where we saw entitled Uncle walking towards my dad waving a pile of papers. Uncle: "Dad, may you sign these? I already got Aunt to sign them, so I only need your signature." My aunt's the youngest of 3. She's kind of a pushover. If Uncle asked her to sign something, she'd do it without question. Dad: "Why would I sign those?" "It's to give Grandpa's money to me. Your daughters don't need it for anything anyways." "Of course I won't sign those. My daughters aren't even going to use the money now. They'll get it when they turn 21, and they'll definitely need it then. Why do you need the money anyways? What Grandpa gave you was more than enough." "You're useless. Your daughters would just waste this money. They don't deserve it." After throwing a bunch of insults at Dad, he stormed off and left the funeral. A few hours later, my family went to visit Grandma's house to comfort her after the loss of her husband, and lo and behold, Uncle is there making Grandma sign papers to turn over her money. I didn't hear much of the conversation after that since my dad made us leave the room, but all I know is that there was a lot of yelling and cursing. About 30 minutes later, my mom told us to get in the car. We were going home. Uncle didn't really bring up the topic for a while, but I started to notice something odd. He started showing up to me and my sister's school events, swim meets, and birthday parties. He lives an hour and a half away from us, but he could never be bothered to take the trip to come visit us before then, which is why I found it strange. Later, I learned he was doing this to try and get us on his side so we'd convince Dad to sign the papers and turn over our money. I didn't really think about it at the time, but now I realize how desperate he was being. Like, why would you try and guilt your 11 and 13-year-old nieces, who didn't understand what was going on, to give up money that was going to be theirs in the future? And when I think about it more, why does he even need our money? He already had Aunt's and Grandma's money on top of his own, so why did he think he was so entitled that he needed all of Grandpa's money? Anyways, Dad figures out Uncle's plan and asks him to stop coming to see us because it wasn't going to work. A few months later, Dad learns that Uncle was taking him to court to try to get Dad's money along with mine and my sister's. I don't know all the details since I was only 11 at the time, but I could tell Dad was furious. I didn't actually see the court case, but I know that Uncle lost, and my mom told me that he was also forced to return the money to Aunt and Grandma too. Defeated, he had no choice but to stop asking us for money. Or at least I thought so. Years after the court case, Uncle started asking for money again, but this time he was asking my sisters to sign the papers. Dad has told us all that if we were ever asked by Uncle to give him our money, to say no. So that's what they did. I could tell Uncle wasn't expecting that. I think he thought that we had no idea what the papers were for and that we would do anything he told us, but he was sorely mistaken. My sisters might not look smart, but they were able to see right through him. After that, we never saw Uncle again. He probably knew if he'd asked me, I would have said no. My grandpa gave me the money, and I wasn't planning on giving it away to someone who didn't even need it. I'm about to be old enough to inherit the money, and I plan to put it to good use. I love the idea of him going to court all self-righteous that he deserves you and your sister's money, then the judge just ordering him to return all the other money he scammed, and now he has court costs on top of it. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.